So welcome and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Watershed Wednesday. This program is sponsored by Clay Subaru of Norwood, Massachusetts. I'm Carrie Snyder. I'm NepRWA's Advocacy Director, and I'll be your moderator for today. The Neponset River Watershed Association is a small, nonprofit, member-supported group with a mission to protect the Neponset River, its tributaries, and surrounding watershed lands. Today's presentation will be brought to you by our rock star water resources professional, Patrick Hogan. And Patrick's going to be talking to us about stormwater and polluted runoff in the Neponset and why we all need to pay attention to how it's managed in our communities. So take it away, Patrick.
All right, thank you very much, Carrie. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see, hopefully that's showing up for everybody. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Like Carrie said, I am the water resource professional for NepRWA. So everything that I deal with pretty much falls into one of two buckets, either water conservation or stormwater. And on stormwater issues, I work a lot with our local municipalities to address various issues, a lot of which we're going to be talking about today. Today, we're going to do a couple of things. First, I want to kind of get us all on the same page and make sure we all understand what stormwater is. Then we'll move into kind of talking about some of the issues that stormwater presents. And then really the meat of this presentation is going to be what each of us can do ourselves to alleviate some of those issues. So let's move right on into it and just talk about what is stormwater. As simply as I can put it, stormwater is precipitation that flows off of our impervious surfaces. Impervious surfaces are surfaces where water cannot soak in. So I'm not talking about our lawns where water soaks into the ground. I'm talking about our roofs, our sidewalks, our driveways, our roads, things like that where water just completely runs right off. And a very important thing here to say is please notice that I said precipitation. I did not say rain. So often with stormwater, we get caught up thinking about rain and only rain, but especially where we live, we really have to think about snow melt as well. It is stormwater as well, flowing right down the road as it melts. So as we're talking about stormwater, think about that. Think about it in both contexts, please. So as I said, it flows off of our impervious surfaces. And your next question is, where does it go? Really, this cartoon really sums it up very well. In pretty much all throughout the area here, we have storm drain systems that are maintained by our municipalities. And this cartoon illustrates it. So it's raining on the house here, right? And as that rainwater hits the driveway and starts to flow, it's stormwater now. And it flows down to the street into these inlets or storm drains that are often you'll find them on the shoulders of roads. And those storm drains are connected by pipe to the nearest waterway. And there is no filtration and no treatment on that flow. There's nothing in between the inlet and the stream. So if you see something go in a storm drain, you might as well figure it's going into the river as well. If you see a piece of trash flow in there, that trash is going to be in the river. There really is nothing to capture it in between there. That's a very big misconception that we constantly try to make sure we clear up with everyone. So no filtration, no treatment, straight line to the river, pretty much. Here I've thrown in a few pictures just to sort of illustrate that cartoon with some real world examples. On the left is the storm drain or the inlet, and they come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. You'll see them like this commonly. You might see them as, well, if you're in a curbed area, you'll see them as kind of holes in the curbs. Pretty much any installation you see that water can easily access and flow into is most likely part of the storm drain system. So like I say, all shapes and sizes, but if water can get in there easily, storm drain system. And like I said, that is connected to pipes that then, flow all around and end up on the right at just a pipe opening that outlets into a river or a creek or a stream or a pond, whatever the nearest water body is. And again, no filtration, no treatment. You're looking at exactly the system right there. It is just the pipe just stops. That's it. So I've said that a couple of times, no filtration, no treatment. So I'm going to guess you probably know a few of the issues I'm going to talk about as we move into this next section here. The first one that you're probably thinking of is stormwater pollution. And it is a very big problem with stormwater. Stormwater by itself, clean stormwater really is fine, you know, but the problem is the things that get added to the stormwater, the things that the stormwater picks up along the way, and it then distributes to the stream. That's where we run into a lot of problems. And really, stormwater pollution for me falls into two big categories. The first is direct pollution, and that is exactly what you're seeing right here. Somebody dumps something directly into a storm drain, which is very problematic and really, really a bad thing, as you can imagine. But as far as this goes, in theory, it's fairly easy to address. Just don't dump anything in a storm drain. It's just that simple, and you avoid direct pollution. You know, of course, easier said than done, but at least the solution to it is easy. The other category, the solution is a little more difficult. The other category is indirect pollution. And indirect pollution happens when materials or pollutants are spilled or left exposed to stormwater, and they themselves do not move to the storm drain under their own power. They sit on the surface, they stay where they're at, but as soon as it rains or as soon as the snow melts, that flowing water carries it to the storm drain and then to the river. So a really good example is leaking cars. So you're seeing it right here. We've all seen this before, a stain under a car, and that's what we probably all say, oh, it's an oil stain. It's all it is. It's not going anywhere. Well, currently that's correct, but as soon as it rains, that's going to pick up the oil and move it along to the river. You know, we've all been walking across parking lots in the rain, and we've seen accumulated water with that rainbow color on it. Well, that rainbow color is oil, and it's picking it up from stains like this. And it's a little bit harder to address in issues of indirect pollution because it requires each of us to think a few steps ahead. That's not just an oil stain, that is stormwater pollution waiting to happen, and I better do something about it. So, you know, like I say, we got to kind of think a few steps ahead. So while we're talking about pollution, I wanted to throw some common pollutants up just to sort of get our brains working towards it. There are the obvious ones that if we took a poll right now, I bet everybody would come up with immediately: oil, chemicals, fertilizer, pet waste, things that we know are already know are environmentally hazardous or that have warnings on their labels, things like that. But there's also some not so obvious pollutants that I really want us to be aware of too. And I've got some examples up here. The first is dirt. Dirt and sediment that gets carried away in rainwater can really cause problems in the stream as it settles out. It can really hurt the habitat of the creek bed and everything. The next two bullets, leaves and grass clippings. Those might be some things you think of, oh, they're natural. They grow out of the ground. That's not a big deal. They decompose. It's all environmental. There's no chemicals involved. And you're right, except in terms of stormwater, they are still pollutants. When you think about an entire storm drain system serving an entire neighborhood, and then you take the leaves from that neighborhood and you funnel them all to one point in the stream, that's no longer natural. That's no longer normal. And they then present a lot of problems as they decompose. They can release excess nutrients. They can deplete oxygen levels in the stream. So even though we see them as natural, they can be a big problem too. Ice melt, especially the season we're moving into now, we want to be very careful with that. Ice melt is important, you know, to keep walkways safe and that sort of thing. But if we use too much, any excess is going to get carried away in that melting snow and is going to end up in the river. So we've got to be very careful about that. And then the last bullet there is my pet peeve. I worked in enforcement with municipalities before. Environmentally friendly and biodegradable products, they are great things and they are less harmful than their non-environmentally friendly counterparts. But they still are not part of stormwater. They still should not be released to the storm drain system. So we're going to get into that. I got a whole slide on it a little bit later. It's my pet peeve, so it's in here for sure. But really my umbrella and my catch-all for this is anything that is collected by stormwater that is not stormwater is a stormwater pollutant. That storm drain system is made for stormwater and stormwater alone, nothing else. So anything else that goes in there is a pollutant. So that's the easy way to sum it up. Now I'm going to show a short video This is an ad made by Think Blue, Massachusetts, which is a regional stormwater educational campaign. And I think it really sort of drives home the point. So I'm going to play it now. It's only 30 seconds long, so hopefully it comes through on your all's end.
If stormwater pollution was rubber duckies, it wouldn't matter what went down storm drains. But it does. Because stormwater pollution is not rubber duckies. It's trash, oil, cigarette butts, and pet waste flowing untreated to the sea. That's not good for any of us because we all live downstream. Clean water. It means quality of life. Think Blue, Massachusetts.
All right, so like I say, hopefully that drives home the pollution point. It really helps you visualize it when you see it as the little rubber duckies. So that kind of covers the pollution issue. There's one other issue I want to talk about in the presentation today, and that's infrastructure issues, especially as they relate to climate change. People have lived in this area for a long time, and there has been stormwater management in this area for a long time. And the climate is changing. We're getting more intense storms more frequently. What was true 50 years ago as far as the average storm is not true anymore. So a lot of these systems that were installed a long time ago aren't as well equipped to handle the average storm nowadays. Along with that, even new systems that are installed, the guidelines currently are to use precipitation data from the 1960s. And we all know the storms are different now than they were in the 60s. So this is a little bit more of a municipal issue, especially since it's related with the infrastructure, but it's something we all need to be aware of as members of the community, especially active members of the community, that there are issues with the infrastructure as the climate changes, that it can't move the water fast enough and may lead to backups and flooding and that sort of thing. So those are the two big issues I want to cover today, but I want to move on into what we each can do now, because I think we all can agree that, I mentioned that the towns are really looking after the storm drain system. They're responsible for the infrastructure and all of that. But as far as pollution goes, I think we can all agree that to see measurable differences, it's really best if each of us makes the small individual changes on our own, and then collectively that adds up to a huge impact. So what I've got for this section are a bunch of little points, a bunch of little pieces of advice, one slide per one item, and we'll just move right through. I hope it doesn't feel like we're jumping around too much, but it'll just be slide with an item, and it's just some stuff that I thought of that we each can do around our houses or in our daily routines that can help. So the first thing is a catch-all, and it's an umbrella for this whole thing. And really, if you only take one slide away today, I think this is the best one to take. If we all operate with this thought in mind, it solves a lot of pollution issues. It really does. And my advice here is just to work it into your thinking that the pavement is directly connected to the river, because it is. Because if it rains on my driveway, that flows to the street, that flows to the storm drain, that flows to the river. It's all directly connected. So my example here was if my car is leaking oil, and let's say it's leaking like 3 drops a day, not much at all, but I see a stain. If I'm thinking like this, I need to ask myself, would I throw 3 drops of oil in the river every day? No, I wouldn't do that. That's disrespectful. That's not being a good steward of the environment. No, I'm not going to do that. So by that extension, I need to get that car fixed, and I need to get it fixed immediately. Because if I'm allowing that thing to leak those 3 drops a day on the driveway, when it rains, that's going to the river. So it's essentially the same thing as me putting it right in the river. So, so thinking like this can help us sort of get ahead of a lot of those indirect pollution issues. The simplest piece of advice I have today is just never dump anything into a storm drain. Storm drains, by their nature, are easily accessible and open to the environment because they have to be to collect the water. Unfortunately, that has led a lot of people to think they are an easy disposal pathway for things they don't want. So I've seen this before, people dumping oil into storm drains. More commonly, I've seen people cleaning out paintbrushes in storm drains. They'll be, they don't want to bring the mess in the house to clean it out in their sink, so they clean it out outside in the storm drain, and it's all going to the river. We know that now. So, just don't dump anything in a storm drain, and you completely cut off that direct pollution category. So it's just that simple for that. Another thing you can do is adopt your nearby drain. And this is a little more proactive. It's not really an official process. There's nothing really involved other than just keeping an eye out. If you happen to have a storm drain near your house or maybe where you work, just keep an eye out for it. As I've already said, our municipal governments are kind of taking care of the infrastructure, but we know that's a handful of folks. And we, if we have a drain near our house, we see that drain hundreds of more times a year than anyone from the town does. So just keep an eye on it. Look for if it's backing up during rainstorms, or if you see staining on the grate that suggests somebody's dumping something. Let the town know. That's all you have to do. Give them a call. They want to solve these issues. They just need to know where they're at. So if you see that sort of stuff, just let the town know. And then also, especially this time of year, you'll see storm drain grates will collect a lot of leaves and stuff. And if you're on a residential street where it's safe to do so, low traffic, that sort of thing, you can rake the leaves back like the person in this photo is doing, and put them with your leaves to be managed from your yard. And what that does is it prevents the leaves from getting to the river. It also opens that drain up to let it flow more freely when it rains. I wanted to touch on car washing. In my ideal world, everybody would use a commercial car wash. I know that's not realistic. It can get expensive, and some people just enjoy washing their car on a nice sunny day, and I get that. So if you choose to wash your car at home, all that I ask is that you position it in such a way that the runoff goes to grassy area, so it'll soak in. Your soap and the wash water from your car will soak into the ground. Just don't let it run down the street, because we know where it goes. Once it gets in the street, storm drain, creek, this is what you have. We also need to properly manage our yard wastes. I've already kind of covered how leaves and grass clippings can be a problem once they get to the stream. So we need to keep them out of the storm drain system. So there's a couple different options for that. You can compost them and use them that way. You can also mulch mow them and leave them on your lawn, get a little bit of free fertilizer that way. Or you can bag them up and dispose of them through your town, as shown in this photo here. And all I'm asking is just really don't blow them into the street. Don't dump them into the storm drain. Don't dump them into the, on the creek bank, all that sort of stuff. Just maintain them and keep them away from the storm drain system and our waterways. Always properly dispose of pet waste. This is one that a lot of us have already heard, mostly from an aesthetic standpoint. Nobody wants to see pet waste. Nobody wants to step in it, obviously. So we want to make sure we properly dispose of it, because it also from a stormwater standpoint, because pet waste, they're like little pollution bombs. They've got bacteria, they've got pathogens, they've got excess nutrients. So we want to make sure we pick it up. If you have a pet, make sure you pick it up and you dispose of it. You're doing your neighbors a favor, you're doing your fellow park goers a favor, and you're also protecting stormwater at the same time. So just make sure you pick it up.
Patrick, I just want to let you know you've got about 5 minutes left.
Great, thank you. Fertilizer, again, in my ideal world, nobody uses fertilizer. I know that's not realistic though. So if you choose to use it, please just use it responsibly. There's a couple of tips along with that. The first thing I suggest for anybody is to get your soil tested on your lawn. UMass Amherst runs a soil testing program. You can look it up on their website. Basically, you collect a sample of soil from your lawn, you send it to them. They send you back a report saying exactly what your grass needs to be healthy. And that way you don't over apply, because if you over apply fertilizer, it gets washed away in the rain, it gets to the stream, it causes pollution problems, and you've wasted your money. So nobody wants that. So also when you buy your fertilizer, read the label, follow all the directions when you're spreading. If any of it accidentally gets on sidewalks or other areas where it won't soak in, make sure to sweep it up. So like I say, just be responsible with fertilizer. Not sure if anybody on the call today has a septic system, but if you do, just make sure you understand it and you maintain it properly. Mostly that entails making sure it's pumped out on a regular schedule. It varies depending on how many people are in your house, how you use your system, whether you have a garbage disposal, but generally 1 to 3 years. Understand how it works and make sure you have a certified professional inspecting it and pumping it out on the schedule they recommend. Another thing we can do that's very easy, we can actually all do this weekend. Just take a walk around your house and take note of where your downspouts are going. Are they going into the grass? Are they going into the ground? Or are they just shooting the water right out onto your driveway? And if that's the case, reroute them so they are doing one of those other things. So they're going into your grass, or like these pictures show, going into gardens where you need extra water. What we're trying to do here is break the chain of roof to driveway to street to storm drain to river. If you can break that chain and send some stormwater to the grass, let it infiltrate a little bit more, it's less stormwater to deal with. It's less chance of pollution. It's more infiltration, which is a good thing, more groundwater. So all of that is very good. Another way of doing this is to install a rain barrel that can collect the water, and you can use it. You can use it later on. Then my pet peeve, I've kind of already covered it, I guess, but environmentally friendly and biodegradable products, they're not stormwater. They may be less harmful than the other alternatives, but they're still not stormwater, and they still should not be freely released to the storm drain system. They still have negative impacts, especially if you think of like car wash soap. It's made to get grease and oil off of cars. Well, we have organisms in our streams that have an oily coating. So what happens when that soap gets to the stream? Even though it's environmentally friendly, it still removes grease and oil. So you can kind of see where I'm going. So I've run into this a lot where people think environmentally friendly means it doesn't matter what happens to it. That's not the case. Please still, especially if in the case of a car wash, send it to a grassy area so it can soak in. And then my last tip for you today has to do with those infrastructure issues that I mentioned. Stormwater often, of the big municipal utilities, water, sewer, and stormwater, it kind of ends up being the third priority because we don't recognize our interaction with it as readily as we do with water and sewer. So I think especially as climate change continues, you're going to see these issues come up in town meetings. So especially if you're active in your community, educate yourself on stormwater, which you're already doing by being here today, and treat it with the attention it deserves as these issues come up to be addressed municipally. Have a few just resources and whatnot here for you for further reading. The first is the Neponset Stormwater Partnership website. That is our regional partnership with NepRWA and Metropolitan Area Planning Council, as well as 11 different municipalities in our watershed. Go to that website. There's a lot of outreach and information there, as well as a fertilizer calculator if you're using fertilizer. You can also go to the NepRWA website. There's some stormwater stuff there, or feel free to reach out to me anytime. I love talking about this stuff, and I really do believe in the impact that these small little changes can make. So if you got questions about something, and they come up after today, we're going to take a few questions today, but if something comes up after today, just feel free to reach out to me. No problem at all. So with that, just thank everybody for joining us. Thank you all. Also, I want to thank Clay Subaru for sponsoring this and letting us all get together and talk about this. And on the right side of your screen is our upcoming Watershed Wednesday calendar. So there's some really, really interesting stuff coming up. So make sure you mark those dates and register and join us for those. But with that, my portion is finished. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Carrie. She's going to lead our question and answer portion.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That was some great information. Let's see. And actually, Dr. Randolph noted that she wasn't aware that there was no filtration on stormwater, and I think she shares that view with a lot of other people. That this isn't commonly known, and so that's why we're bringing it to light. So I'm not sure who posed this question, but they asked, is there any type of standard for mapping stormwater, including mapping those BMPs like swales and major commercial BMPs?
Yeah, there is, and it's something our municipalities are working towards. Try to be brief with this, I guess, but each town has a stormwater permit that's issued by the federal government because the EPA a long time ago recognized the impact that stormwater can have. So towns with these storm drain systems have these permits with certain requirements that are aimed at preventing pollution and correcting pollution. And one of the requirements is to map the storm drain system, because especially when you have a pollutant at the stream and you want to track it back, you have to know where it's coming from. So the municipalities have already done a lot of work on that. And I was out with some municipalities on Monday, and they made the note. It's an ongoing process. They always have their eyes open. When they're in the field and they see something that's not on their map, they collect a point, they bring it back to they use GIS, they bring it back to their GIS guys so that it can be mapped, and their system is constantly being updated and improved with that information.
Great, thank you. And just one thing that I forgot to mention, once again, for those of you who joined us late, if you do not want to be, if you don't want your image to be on the recording, since we are recording this presentation, please just turn off your video. But again, feel free to drop any questions into the chat box. So the next question comes from Glenn Maffei. Of the 14 NepRWA communities, are there any communities that still allow stormwater to run directly into the sewer systems? And as a follow-up, can you discuss catch basins and oil separators and their role in filtering stormwater?
Sure. Yes, stormwater into sewers there's no longer any connected storm sewer systems in our area, thankfully, because that was a problem. So in our area, I believe they've all been removed. And then catch basins and oil water separators, they can be helpful. Catch basins, so I showed that picture of the grate earlier where the water was flowing in. A lot of times what that is that'll be a concrete box, and the outflow pipe will be about midway up in that box. So at the bottom, you get some stuff falling out. So it can kind of be, it's almost like it helps. It helps to clean. I would by no means rely on that to catch everything, but it helps. Every little bit helps. And so when the water goes in there, it might let the sediment or the dirt fall out, and or maybe some of the trash before the clean water flows out a little bit higher up, floating on top. And oil water separators are kind of the same idea. They're more installed in areas where we know there's a problem, where they're installed on properties that maybe have a lot of grease and oil, large auto maintenance facilities, things like that. But they also help. They kind of work on that same principle of stopping the stormwater and trying to get a little bit of treatment ahead before it flows on down the pipes. Ooh. Carrie, I'm sorry, I think you're muted.
I am. I'm sorry. That's not a good job for a moderator. So the next question comes from Celeste Palma, and it has to do with green infrastructure goals. And she wonders if there is a green infrastructure plan and stormwater reduction goal in Massachusetts, or within any local bylaws. For example, Toronto requires 20 to 60% of commercial and residential roof space to be set aside for green roofs, and there seems to be some similar goals happening with Rethink in Milwaukee. Do you know of anything going on in Massachusetts?
Sure. Well, I'll preface this question by saying I'm new to Massachusetts relatively. I've only been here a year, so I'm still learning a lot of stuff. And I will also say our bylaw expert is our moderator, so if she has anything to add, please feel free. But I do know, so I spoke of the stormwater permit earlier, and that directs towns to scout for and install stormwater green infrastructure, or these stormwater best management practices, BMPs. There's a bunch of different names, but essentially they're installations made to help collect and try to clean up stormwater as it flows out, or even try to infiltrate it and benefit groundwater. And so the permit has a lot of requirements aimed at that. The state also has a lot of grants that are designed to encourage that in towns. I don't know of any more local official goals or anything like that, other than the more unofficial. Every town is looking for opportunities like this because they all ultimately want to see this problem cleaned up. But again, Carrie, if you have anything to add, please feel free.
No, I think that's it. I'm not sure of any pending legislation that would do this, but certainly it is, it's any climate resiliency program is a hot topic right now, and it is being discussed at the legislative level. I'm just not sure specifically about green infrastructure and stormwater reduction goals on a statewide basis. As Patrick said, really the key control right now is that EPA MS4 permit. So I don't see, oh, hold on, we did get one more. So from Dr. Randolph, so thank you for the tips on how personally I can monitor the water going into the storm drains. There's a stormwater drain at the end of my driveway. So did I miss this? When the stormwater with contaminants flows into the main body of water, what is the filtration opportunity along the way before it flows into our homes? I live in Stoughton.
So I think the question is getting around to after stormwater goes into the pipes and into the stream before it comes back as drinking water, I think.
I think that might be it. And Dr. Randolph, please
Gotcha.
feel free to, okay.
Thank you, Dr. Randolph. We do have water treatment plants that are treating our drinking water before sending it to our house. And of course, they come with their own slew of regulations to make sure what they're sending us has had contaminants removed and contaminants of concern removed and things like that. So there is a process for those of us on water that is locally treated. I know there's also NepRWA water that is also treated before it is distributed to us. So it is a problem, and that makes a good point too. We're talking about stormwater pollution and affecting the environment, but we can even go one step further and say, if that doesn't quite get you excited about preventing stormwater pollution, well, any stormwater pollution we let into the stream eventually has to be removed by the treatment plant, and that is going to cost money. That is going to raise our cost of drinking water. So that's actually a really good point, that the pollution eventually we're going to remove it for drinking water. So it's in our best interest just to not add it to start with.
Thank you, Patrick. If anybody else has any questions, you can drop it in the chat, or if your video is on, you can raise your hand and I will call on you. All right, it looks like we might be done. Thank you all again for attending today. And thanks again to Clay Subaru of Norwood for sponsoring Watershed Wednesday. We're very fortunate to be able to be with you, everyone, on these Watershed Wednesdays. So just a reminder, the recording of this session will be available on our website at neponset.org within the next 24 hours, and you can please feel free to share it. And please also visit neponset.org just for more information about NepRWA and all the great projects that we're engaged in right now. Thanks again.